Hello my friends and welcome to another video in which I'm going to be talking about something different. And yeah, it's in the news, and this is something that I pretty much have seen way too much of as of recent. And it's been everywhere as far as game shows are concerned, that, change can be a good thing or a bad thing. And if you're like me has watched many game shows over the course of 40 some odd years, then you know it's going to happen. Talk about the game itself and the many reboots it has and the many different hosts it has gone through, and some more memorable than others. And the last thing I remember listening to was Pat Sajak stepping down from Wheel of Fortune and Ryan Seacrest taking over hosting duties. And quite recently I also read that he'll be back to do Celebrity Wheel. So, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing in itself, because the fans have maybe far too much power as far as where the show should go as far as the direction is concerned. You have some people who are devout followers of the show. That means they love Pat and Vanna, and they feel that some things shouldn't change, and if it does change, it's going to be like blasphemy if the changes happen. But hey, the higher ups have the power, not the people who give public opinion. Jeopardy is one of those long time running shows. For me, 40 years. That's how long I've been living. About 45 years. But it has been one of the longest running shows in game show history. Because the second is The Price is Right. So, I'm about to read an article, or rather a few articles, in concerning certain game shows, Jeopardy being one of them. Jeopardy's fans slam forced clue in rhyme category days after fact checkers came under fire. Jeopardy fans don't hold back when it comes to making it known that they dislike certain game show categories or judgment calls made by Ken Jennings. As of late, avid Jeopardy viewers have slammed the Trivia's competition rhyme time category. Supporters of the game show that take issue with the category often rant about the clues that fall under it. However, after Wednesday's Jeopardy's episode, some wanted to do away with rhyme time altogether. The rhyme time section is named that because it requires a synonymous answer with two rhyming words. Many Jeopardy fans took to social media to discuss today's show, especially on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. One fan divulged on Twitter their opinion on the rhyme time category. Rhyme time. I just find the clues so forced. Hashtag Jeopardy. One person wrote, the critics' point of view mirrored much of what Jeopardy fans complained about earlier this month. Jeopardy's July 1st episode ran smoothly until show contestants Zoe Strasfield, Matt Brooks, and Kat Pisacano encountered a clue from the rhyme time category. None of the contestants chose to buzz in to solve the $800 clue, which happens to be a kayak inspection. Ken noted that the players were stumped before announcing the answer, which was a canoe review. Countless watchers were upset with clue being to be misleading because of the differences between canoes and kayaks. Kayaks aren't canoes. That was a painful clue. One raged in Jeopardy theme online thread. Yeah, I thought kayaks were kayaks. A second cosign. Kayaks and canoes are not synonymous. As an avid boater, that one really stuck in my craw. Third ranted. Several more slammed Jeopardy's production team for not properly fact-checking the clue before adding it to the board. Moving on. I never understand how mistakes like this that are so easy to fact-check get through, an angry viewer admitted. Anyone who's used both knows Anyone who's used both. Let me read that again. I can read this, I swear. Anyone who's used both knows how absolutely different they are, another critic mentioned. I was displeased with this clue. Some fans tried to be understanding, noting that although kayaks and canoes may share a relation, they still shouldn't have been recognized as being the same in the clue. Ken's not new to provoking backlash among Jeopardy viewers. In April, Ken was shamed by game show fans for a confusing and distracting habit that he had been doing throughout Jeopardy's 2024 Invitational Tournament. Many had become fed up with the way he abbreviated the tournament, rather calling it the tournament by its full name, which is a lot to say over and over again. Ken referred to the games as JIT and introduced contestants using the term as well. Okay, now before we move on to the next one, let me point something out. For one, like I said, the thing here is we live in a very advanced age to where people are over fickle. Not just fickle, over fickle. And that can and indeed happen. Now, when it comes to Jeopardy, I feel that most of them will become grammar Nazis. If not that, they become uppity assholes who know nothing about language. But maybe that's just me. I keep it to where, hey, I just want to watch the show. Now, let's compare, shall we? Now, if you're a long-time viewer of my channel, I cover video games. A lot of them, more often than not, that being like 90% of the time, the other 10% being everything else. That means stuff like this. Stuff that, isn't really, in the news, but should be talked about regardless. This is one of those things that should be talked about. As far as television is concerned, we're talking about Jeopardy. We're talking about the longest running show since TV. Okay, that's how far back it goes, since TV came out, and we all saw it in black and white, or most of our previous generation saw it in black and white. Went through Art Fleming, gone through Alex Trebek. The third now is Ken Jennings, and Jeopardy has went through how many hosts to get this one dude to actually host the show. Now, keep in mind that Jeopardy has been through a lot of shit. For one, you need to be like very intellectual to actually get a chance to be on Jeopardy. I mean, Jeopardy is that of an intellectual game show. I mean, even there was a game show prior to this during Jeopardy that was like Jeopardy and almost played like it, but it was entirely different. And Dick Clark was the host of the show, and it was called The Challengers, which was like Jeopardy, but not quite like Jeopardy. Even though they had the concept down similar to Jeopardy, but unlike Jeopardy, there are a bit of differences. Now, mind you, I feel that social media has kind of overstepped their boundaries as far as what they should do to the show. I feel that some people just need to chill the hell out. It's like you're not on the show. And even if you were on the show, you'd probably get the same treatment that everybody else would be getting if you were on that show. I mean, that show is high caliber intellectual intelligence. Because it takes a lot of thought. It takes a lot of it takes a lot of thought to be on that show, to actually use that focus energy just to know general knowledge. At least 80% of what you know would be general knowledge, and it's up there on the board. And you could pretty much, if you know how to play the game, you can choose to know everything or not everything. Like, we're talking about a quarter of what you know goes into certain categories, or what have you. From what I've seen from every show, when Alex was hosting, it was basically, most of the contestants knew like at least a quarter, if not half, of what was on that board during the first two rounds of Jeopardy, being Jeopardy and Double Jeopardy, and most had difficulty with Final Jeopardy. Now, I feel that, the one thing I've noticed about Jeopardy, and if you ever had the NES version of it, the one thing that was basically an issue, it was technically in the spelling. Now, in the NES version of Jeopardy, yeah, that was the only thing that they would catch hell with. Like, if you didn't spell it right, oh, that's not the right answer. I think the same goes for the Genesis version. I'm not sure about the PlayStation version, because I did have the PlayStation version once, but I never did cover that. Maybe I might do that for a future episode of the Chest of Obscurity. I am not sure. But in any case, I feel like people just need to chill. You're watching a TV show. You're watching it online, if not that. And, no need to really get your intestines in a knot over something like this. It's like, you don't understand how much effort it takes to be on a show like that, and how much pressure that you're already on there. The pressure is really on as soon as you go up against two other people who are just as smart, if not smarter than you. And let's take another and show respect for Ken Jennings. I said that takes a lot. That took like a lot of energy to actually make a streak so long to where basically He could have just basically said, "Look, I can take over, running the network." I said, "You got that much money on hand? Shoot, you can probably run a network of your own and still have money to boot. You still have something left over to do whatever the hell you want to do with it." So it's like, it doesn't matter. You're not on the show. For those who are on Twitter and you're ranting about one episode of Jeopardy or one category that didn't make sense, guys, chill. It's just a game show. Let's go into something else regarding Jeopardy. About the fans slamming at contestants for not going all in on a daily double. So we're gonna look at this, and just gonna say no, whatever. All right. Yeah. Whatever. Just let me read, please. Whatever. All right. So this comes from the Mirror. Jeopardy fans slam contestant for not going all in on daily double, costing him the game. During Tuesday's semifinal of the Jeopardy Invitational Tournament, or the JIT, fans claimed that one of the contestants should have bet all their money in order to win and move on. The last semifinals game of the JIT aired on Tuesday night, finally giving us one of three finalists. During the game, three players squared off. David Madden, an academic competition director from Ridgewood, New Jersey; Jennifer Quayle, who's a wine tasting consultant from Dallas, Michigan; and Amy Schneider, a writer from Oakland, California. First commercial break, Amy was in the lead with 4,800, Jennifer 2,400, and David with 800. Amy found the first daily double and got it correct, raising the score by 3,000. This was the last semifinal game of the tournament. Then going into Double Jeopardy, Amy still led with 8,400 or 8,400. Jennifer kept second place with 1,200, and David dropped to 400. David found the first daily double of the round on the first question and answered correctly, getting 2,000. He took the head, and as he found the last daily double and added 5,000 to his score instead of going all in, which he would have bet 6,500. It was neck and neck between him and Amy, with Amy just beating David with a score of 17,600 going into final. David trailed close with 17,400, and Jennifer had 7,200. The final Jeopardy category was historic groups, and Jennifer bet it all, answered incorrectly, dropping down to a final score of 0. Amy and David got the correct answer, and Amy bet everything sans 100 and won the game with 35,100. David only bet 209, bringing his score up to 17,609. As fans cheered Amy moving on, they also claimed that if David had went all in his last daily double, he would have won the game. Hindsight's 2020, but David really should have done a TDD, especially against a juggernaut like Amy. That would have been a big upset, one fan wrote on Reddit, on a Reddit thread of the game. Other fans disagree, with one claiming there's simply no advantage to David for the 5,000 bet versus all in. One fan didn't blame David, but the game of Jeopardy itself. How is that even in recent years, as we see more and more players absolutely obliterate their competition and go on long runs through daily double betting? Do some champions still not understand that when playing against other fellow buzzer geniuses that they can't leave any money on the table, they wrote. David absolutely should have won today's game. It's ridiculous he didn't go in on Daily Double 3. Okay, and that's all there is. That's all there is, it seems. Okay. So about this, let me just say this as far as that's concerned. Look, you got enough pressure going on when you're playing Jeopardy. I mean, really, there's enough pressure going on because you're on Jeopardy. That should tell you something. If you're on Jeopardy, that means the pressure's really on because you made it through the audition process. You got chosen. On top of that, let me go back to the first category. And then on top of that, let's see. You went through this, and let's say you're so smart you get through basically, like say regular Jeopardy. That means your normal 3 rounds of Jeopardy, going through Jeopardy, double, and then final. You actually get through it. Then you have to deal with being king of the hill or queen of the hill, take your pick. You have to deal with trying to stay on top for, say, a certain number, a certain streak, Like back in the old days, there used to be a certain limit with streaks. Like say, for certain CBS shows, I'm gonna pick Pressure Luck. When it was on CBS, you had a certain streak you had to uphold, or actually, you had to meet a certain streak. Your streak would end as soon as you hit that limit. $25,000 was back in the day the limit you could hit. If you basically hit above that, like 25,000. If you basically got a little over that, excluding the pyramid. And I say stuff like Pressure Luck and no, really, that was the name of a game show back on CBS called in which basically you had to climb a certain ladder of questions to get to the top. And if you won 2 rounds, then you go to the bonus round in which you would have to answer a streamline of questions from start to finish. And whatever you had as far as the time allotted from the main game, you amassed within the main game, that was added to the base time. And then on top of that, you had a little bit more to choose from, but you still had to remember, if you got an answer wrong, it will cost you 5 seconds just to get to the next question. And you basically had to get through 10. You basically had to get through 10 quote-unquote bad guys to get to the pot of gold at the end. Versus now. You're on a show like, say, Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune, the 2 longest running shows ever to exist. That's still running today. I mean, you still got Match Game. You still got Price is Right. But yeah, and you still got Family Feud. So these are like the top of the top of the top of game shows you'll ever hear of for the rest of your life, which is Price is Right, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, Family Feud, and Match Game. the match game was more like on and off. So it's like, basically match game was more like it was, it was basically like a filler sort of game show. Now it wasn't like when it was on CBS. It was more like it. Now it's more like a filler for summer than you'd see like on CBS when it was like full time from 74 to 78. And then they tried to reboot it and it didn't happen to go well twice. The second time was on NBC when it was part of a combo with Hollywood Squares. It was a missed opportunity because they could have had the original MC of Hollywood Squares, because you already had the original MC of Match Game. So you could have had Gene Rayburn and Peter Marshall. You could have had a back-to-back combo of game show greats, but they chose John Bauman over Peter Marshall. And then there was the third incarnation, which wasn't as good as the original, just because, hosting aside, the star power as well as the jokes weren't as up to par as, say, back in the 70s. And then you got the fourth incarnation, which again wasn't as good as the first incarnation. Well, actually, there were 5 incarnations, but the black and white one was basically more or less a prototype to the 70s version. And as I said, now this with Match Game is more like if the jokes are good and if the celebrities are very likable, then it's worth watching. Otherwise, if it's not worth watching, then you just wasted your time and everybody else's. I remember there were a lot of game show reboots that were hit and miss. Some more miss than hit. I mean, there's some there still out there, like Chain Reaction, Card Sharks, and Pressure Luck. Pressure Luck is more big money than anything. It is like, it pales comparison way more than what the original had. And remember, that game show also suffered from, a lot of scandal because of Michael Larson. So I feel that now it's like when you have shows like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and Price is Right coming under fire from the general public fan base, it's hard to tell if you should be part of the viewing section or should you share your opinions about the show itself. And I feel, as I grew up with these shows, well, mine is the following. My thoughts about this are like this. It's just a game show. Hit or miss is basically gonna happen on a game show. It happened while you had the Goods and Todman era, and it's happening with the Fremantle era. So there's no big difference. I mean, it's like, you're going to get errors. There is no such thing as a perfect game show. And not all of them play the same way. Not all of them go under the same rules. But they do adhere to a certain universe of rules, in which, as long as it's fair and it's caught, then it's fine. Because some game shows, some tend to forget, oh hey, they would call on the judge. They would have an off-screen judge that they would have to call on if they need a correction. Because you remember shows like Sailor's Century? Sailor's Century had an off-camera judge that basically would call out the host and, basically say, they would just say, Jim, da 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 da. Jim Perry, he was the host of Sailor's Century. And they would just basically call it out right on the air as they were taping, and basically, if there was some error, either he would reread the question or throw it out, because there's some things that the judge can hear and the host can't hear, or there are some things the host can hear and the judge can't hear. And they would make it a cardinal rule that if you know the answer to the question and you're in the in-studio or the in-house audience, don't blurt it out, because that'll cost the contestants a chance to buzz in or whatnot, and it'd be a foul ball. It'd be thrown out. And I've seen very few times in which that does happen. So I'd say this, yeah, guys, it's just a game show. Shit like that happens almost all the time, and they try to be as fair as they possibly can. And you can't expect perfection from a game show. Okay? So that's one thing to note, because not every game is going to play under the same rules, but they have to be firm but fair. That's the universal rule of all game shows. You have to be firm but fair. That means if it needs to be called out, that's why they have a judge. That's why they have an in-house judge, just to make sure if the host is right or if the contestants are right. They have to make sure that, it's a-okay. Because if something seems wrong or sounds wrong, then that's on them to call it out. So it's not on, it shouldn't be on the viewers like, well, they should have said, well, if the judge didn't say anything, then therefore, that's it right there. Their word is law, not yours. And it's the same thing for if you're on Jeopardy. You're on Jeopardy and you make it this far and you go all or nothing. And if you blow it, well, then that's on you. But, you can go in as little as you can or a lot of it. Or maybe you don't want to do it at all. That's the thing about Jeopardy. You not only have to be smart, but you have to play smart as far as how much you've amassed, how much you're willing to give for this one question that you know versus what you don't know. That's all Jeopardy is, what you know and what you don't know. What you don't know, you don't bet shit. You bet zero. What you do know, if you feel up to it, if you're 150% to 200% positive that you know the answer to this question, go for it. You can go 3/4. You could go half. You can go all. But be prepared. You got to go up there again if you win. And if you don't, well then guess what? The fact is you made it on the show. You went through 30 whole minutes. maybe 40, but I'm saying 30 because with all the cutting, all the editing down, it's really 30 minutes. But it's probably like 50 some odd minutes or so. You can never tell. But aside from that, you made it through getting on the show, being on an episode. That's enough right there. And imagine you having to go through a streak, like a certain limited number streak versus like unlimited, and you're on a game show that is basically defend your championship, defend your title type of deal, to show who's the smartest of them all. That's a lot of pressure. And the last thing that anybody needs is some jackanape who basically says, oh, this is wrong because of ABCDEFG. But again, that's just how I feel, though. I feel, there are certain things that just need to not be a thing for social media to really just argue about, especially if it's a game show. I mean, really. It's not really worth it. So with that, that'll do it for this episode of, well, this video, rather. An episode of what? No, it'll do it for this episode. For this video. I'll just say it like this. I'm tired. Yeah, it's 80 degrees outside. Partly sunny. And it's on a Thursday, but you'll see this coming Sunday. So feel free to drop a comment about this if you're a TV watcher of Jeopardy, or if you're not a TV watcher of Jeopardy, but please share your thoughts about game shows in general. What's good about them, what's bad about them, and whatnot, and we'll go from there. Hope to see you soon with some great with some greater content than you've already been seeing. And I'll see you next time with something else.